Well, welcome everybody. We got a really good turnout for today's turf talk with GrowinGreen's Jonathan Rigsbee. I really appreciate you being on the webinar today, taking time out of your busy day. We hope to get you familiar with Holganix products in this webinar through Jonathan's experience. But if you never ever use Holganix products, we think there's still some really good value in this webinar in understanding how Jonathan's built a heck of a lawn care business down in North Carolina. And his experience not just with Holganix products, but some of his tips in general. So we're real excited about this. Jonathan Rigsbee's he's a longtime customer of Holganix, and he's really become a friend over the years. Really appreciate his business and his friendship. And if you look at Jonathan as a professional in the industry, he's been in the industry virtually his whole life. Started at TruGreen, went into All Green, which was a TruGreen roll up at one point back in the day. And 19 years ago, started up his own lawn care company. Today, they've got it up to 14 really nice spray trucks, well over 3,000 customers. And Jonathan, not just is a really knowledgeable lawn care operator, but he's also got several degrees in horticulture and turf management. He's got a degree to be a superintendent, a golf course superintendent, which is what he thought he might do at one point in his life, but moved into lawn care with that experience. Plus, he's got 2 degrees in horticulture, and 2 of his 3 degrees are from NC State. So, Jonathan's not just knows what he's talking about from being in the field, but he's got the education to back it up. And one of the things that I thought was really neat about Jonathan's business, among other things you're going to learn, but his average revenue per customer is 3 times the industry average. So he's able to get a lot more revenue per client, which I think is a really key lesson, and love to hear more about how Jonathan does that later in our presentation. But before we get into the webinar, we just want to start off with our agenda, just so everybody understands what we're doing here today. 10 minutes of kind of introduction, which I've already started. We've got a couple of kind of audience questions for you, just to kind of gear the material towards the type of people that are on the call. And then we're going to have an in-depth interview with Jonathan, and then we're going to move on to conclusions, and we'll have audience participation with questions. So as you hear the presentation, if there's general questions that you have, you can go ahead and type them right in, and at the end, Katie will help us sort through those questions, and hopefully we'll get to everybody's question before the session's over. And so by all means, ask questions as we go. But before you ask questions, we want to ask you a question. And again, this just helps us curtail the information to the type of people that are on the call. What industry do you serve? So, lawn and landscape, agriculture, sports turf, parks rec, golf course, superintendent, or are you a Holganix distributor partner, or other? So if you could just check that off, we'll just give you a minute or two to check off which one applies to you, and then it tallies the results for us here. And so we can kind of give you the results and let you know what's going on. So Katie, tell us what you see once you see it.
Okay. We have 75% of the vote in, approaching 80%. Oh, we hit 80 and going into 90. Let's see what we've got here.
Okay. So 68% lawn and landscape professionals. So that's perfect for, I think, the stuff that Jonathan's going to talk about today. We've got 9% in the sports turf, golf course, parks rec. Which is great because, again, Jonathan's got that background as well. And the Holganix distributors and partners are 18%. So appreciate you guys joining in and hearing Jonathan's experience. 5% are other, so that's great too. By the way, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Barrett Ersek. I'm the CEO and founder of Holganix. So thank you, everybody, for those of you who are customers. Thanks for your business. Those of you who are learning about Holganix, thanks for your time. So we've got one more poll, and then we'll move on to the interview. Are you currently using any Holganix products today? And select any that apply, any and all that apply, and you can select more than one. And if you're a distributor, Katie, they should focus on the ones that they sell the most of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's one that you kind of feel like you sell more than another, if you're a distributor or a sales rep, what have you, you can check that box off. So Holganix Bio 800, that's any of the refrigerated Holganix products. They're formulated for lawn, golf, tree, shrub, bloom, ag. But anything that's in a refrigerator is part of our Bio 800 line. And then you've got the Blue Sky and 3000, which are our nitrogen products. We've got a potassium phosphorus product in the 21020. So that's all of our prebiotic fertilizers. They're not refrigerated, but they have nutrients in them. And then we have the granular Healthy Grow line. as well as the Biodeck formulations, which would be a granular without phosphorus. And then the PB1 LTO, which is our non-refrigerated probiotic, or maybe you're not using Holganix yet.
All right.
So you want to share those results, Katie?
I do. I got a mixed bag.
So we got 37% are using the refrigerated product line. Blue Sky 3000, 21020, the prebiotic fertilizers, 32%. And the granular Healthy Grow or Biodeck line is the 32%. And the 402 LTO, which is the PB1, the non-refrigerated probiotic is 16%, and not using it is 47%. So good mix. Thanks for taking the time to share that with us. And then from there, we're going to move into the presentation.
Yep. Just give me 1 second, guys, while I shift back into this.
Not sure what kind of weather everybody's having out there. I'm sitting here in Philadelphia, and it is snowing its tail off. We've got a couple inches of snow on the ground, so that's kind of weird for us up here. Hopefully, you're not all seeing a bunch of snow unless you got plows in your truck, in which case,
bring it on.
Yeah. So Jonathan, I know had some internet challenges. Jonathan, you on the call and everything okay on your side? Just checking in.
Pretty funny.
So what do you got there?
How about you want to shoot him a text for me?
Yeah, Jonathan's internet went down right before this thing, so he was using his cell phone to kind of work through the internet. And
are you there?
Oh, hey, Jonathan, you there?
Nice.
Yep.
Okay, good. I was just checking in with you before we got too deep into the presentation. I knew you had a problem.
We're good to go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jonathan. So before we get into our direct interview with Jonathan, just want to kind of give you a general overview of what is in Holganix Bio 800 Lawn, because that's a lot of what Jonathan's going to be talking about in his experience. That's the primary product that he's used over the years from our Holganix product line. And the Bio 800 is, again, that's anything that's a Holganix product that's in the refrigerator. We've got the lawn formula, we've got the tree and shrub formula, both of which we're going to talk about today. There's also a bloom formula and a golf formula and an agriculture formula. But they all have one thing in common, which is that they have a tremendous amount of biological diversity. In fact, they have over 800 species of beneficial bacteria and fungi all working together. It's really an entire soil microbiome, in a concentrated form in a bottle. And by using it, putting it onto the soil, you're gonna really supercharge your soil at a microbiological level, and we're going to get that soil much healthier and much higher degree of functionality in the soil, because we'll get the biology really teeming with beneficial bacteria, beneficial fungi, as well as amoebas and protozoas and everything that you need to really foster good, healthy soil. The benefits to your turf is going to be you're going to have much better tolerance to stress from weather, high traffic, too much rain, not enough rain. High traffic areas, if you're using it on sports turf situations, it's really great at recovery. One of the reasons that we get some of those benefits is because we get tremendous root depth and root density. Root architecture really improves. So deeper, thicker, web-like root system, tremendous. If you get the right beneficial biology in there, we can do wonderful, wonderful things with roots. And we also get green color with less fertilizer inputs, and we can often get better improved weed control. And a healthier lawn that's going to resist weeds and pests, fungus, disease. We're even going to hear a little bit about aphids and how biology help reduce our aphid outbreaks. So with that, we'll move on to the presentation with Jonathan. So I'm just going to catch myself up here in my notes. So Jonathan, you used Holganix as I talked to you earlier about some of the things we could be talking about today. I was really blown away with the story you told me about that street where you were competing with TruGreen, and how you were kind of going back and forth, and who could have the best lawns, and the landscape contractor you're working through. Can you tell us that story?
Well, basically, we do a lot of subcontract work. We've got about 30 landscapers that we actually do their applications for, and we had one in particular who was essentially the hand provider in the area, and anything less than number one was not good enough for him. So we had a street of about 9 houses. We had 6 of them. TruGreen had 1 or 2. And, it was always a competition to keep that color. Who could have come the quickest out of the gate in the spring? and who can maintain the color, deeper, darker color the longest. So it ended up basically them dictating to us to keep pushing the nitrogen levels up to try to get more color out of it. And it got to a point where we were so high, we were starting to have salt injury on the fescue, especially when we got to May, late April, May, when we get some 80, 90-degree days, we would start to see some tip burn. And, you know, it became a teetering issue of safety and efficacy on what we were doing. So we've been able to basically reduce that amount by 70%, 60-70% on average, and have better color, less succulent growth. We've kind of leveled out the growth curve, so we're not getting that big flush and then it just crashes. We get more consistent color. We're actually coming out of the gate faster because we're putting Holganix out in December instead of putting a pound of nitrogen out, which was what we would used to do to try to help expedite the process in the spring. We now have gone to doing a Holganix application in December, and that's kind of helping bring that turf out of dormancy a little faster. Once we put about a quarter to a third of a pound of nitrogen on it in round one in February and early March, and we're out the door as green as we want to be.
Wow. And so, and just for everybody's, you know, because people are from all over the country, Jonathan, you're in North Carolina, basically Charlotte area.
We're Greensboro, North Carolina. So we're growing mostly tall fescue, maybe 10% Bermuda grass. Every once in a while we kill a centipede lawn just for the fun of it. and we're starting to see a lot of zoysia come in as well.
Okay. And your dormancy season starts when, and when does the grass come out of dormancy typically, just to put it in perspective?
Generally, we'll see a reduced growth up into December when we start getting really heavy, you know, sub freezing temperatures in January, February is when we'll go into more of a deep dormancy. Getting it out, generally we start to see it come out early March, April. Depending on the microclimates, depending on the weather, obviously.
Sure.
But we can start to green them up late February, and that's where adding that extra nitrogen before Holganix, because it would help expedite it a little bit.
Right.
And so the national companies, that's all they've got. So it gives us a competitive advantage to keep the nitrogen levels lower, but still get the same color response.
Yeah.
And actually, honestly, we're getting better color response. And
typically we see it last longer. We don't see the surge growth. So if you're mowing, you're not baling hay. And we're getting a healthier turf grass because we're not pushing it to grow at an abnormal rate. So we get less disease, we get less stress. You know, everything kind of works better. And by the way, gang, the reason that's working is because the Holganix Bio 800, we've got all of the biology going into the soil that's going to help convert nutrients into forms that are digestible by the plant, both nutrients that we apply, but also nutrients that are in the soil already that just aren't there and aren't available. And that goes for nitrogen as well as phosphorus and potassium. You know, it's estimated that 50% of the nitrogen we apply doesn't actually get used by the plant. It either gets tied up in the soil, washes away, or volatilizes. And by using the right biology paired with the fertilizer, almost all of that fertilizer goes to where we want it to go, which is the plant. We don't always see 70% reduction. That's something we do see commonly with customers. Sometimes it's less than 70% reduction. It really comes down to soil type, turf type, and the program we're referencing. But in Jonathan's case, you know, he went from like 1.25 pounds down to, you know, I think he said, you know, around 1/4 pound to 1/2 pound. So and got a better result. So great story, Jonathan. Thanks for sharing it. Anything else you want to share on that topic there, Jonathan, before we get to roots?
Just to reiterate what you said, you know, 70% was based on that particular street. Overall, as a company, we're about 60 to 65%.
Yeah.
And that's taking into account new customers. Customers have been with us for years. We don't have to add in extra stuff on new customers as often as we did before. But you're right. The biggest thing is we're getting the most efficiency out of the fertilizer we're using. We're getting probably the same amount of efficiency out of that quarter to a third of a pound as we were out of a pound.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Because the is letting it work.
Great point, Jonathan. Thanks for sharing it. Let's move from fertilizer to roots. It's kind of cool. You guys won we used to do the Holganix Roots for You competition every year. We'd have our customers from all over the country send us in pictures of their roots, and we would see who had the best roots from around the country. And in 2013, Jonathan's company won the roots competition for his category, and tall fescue rooting depth beyond 9 inches, which is pretty impressive. Jonathan, do you remember this? This was quite a few years ago.
Oh yeah, and I would add, if you look at that soil, that is some heavy compacted clay once you get past the first 2 inches.
Oh yeah, yeah, you can definitely see that the soil structure changed there, and yet we still had roots pushing through that clay. Which, look, if you have heavy compacted clay, the best way to long-term improve it is to start pushing roots through it. Roots are organic matter, and so we start pushing roots through the clay, we start getting more porosity in the clay, and we start getting more organic matter in the clay. But that's pretty cool picture. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jonathan. Anything else on roots, Jonathan? Oh, this is a specific customer's photo. I hadn't seen this one.
So I wanted to point this one out. This lawn is maintained on about 2.5 pounds of nitrogen a year.
Wow.
Organic. And for the color that we've got here, the thickness of the turf. This picture was taken in May, right before their second application. This lawn had about 1/4 pound of N, a little bit of iron, and 3 ounces of Holganix in the first application.
Per 1,000 square feet.
Per 1,000 square foot.
Wow. And just to put this in perspective for everybody around the country, in this market, this is probably a 10-month growing market, something like that. We'd normally see lawn care programs in the 4 to 6 pounds per 1,000 for nitrogen. Is that right, John?
Yeah, we were at about 5.5 pounds before we started using Holganix. Now we're between 2.5 to 2 3/4, depending on the season.
Wow, really cool. And you just don't get any prettier than that.
And most of that, honestly, most of that's coming in the 2 fall seeding apps.
Okay.
For the rest of the year, we don't get over 1/3 of a pound of N on any given app.
Neat. And benefit there is we get less stress, we get less disease. Obviously, we're spending less money on fertilizer. We're not pushing it. And we can get a more compact, denser lawn, which then leads to less weeds because we're pushing energy into lateral growth as opposed to vertical growth.
Exactly. And if you look at this one, and of course it's subjective, it doesn't look wet and succulent and just like it's out of control.
Right.
And that's and keep in mind that we're using Holganix year round. This lawn had probably had 2 or 3 years of it at this point consistently. And it is something that, builds up in the soil. It takes time. It's not an overnight process. But if you buy into the program and you stick with it, the results will be there.
Yeah, that's great. And by the way, every time Jonathan says Holganix, unless we say otherwise, he's talking about the Bio 800 products. We do have a whole portfolio under Holganix, but Bio 800 was the first Holganix product. So a lot of times we just kind of divert to saying that's Holganix. Now, Jonathan, tell me what's going on in this picture. We can really see the density of this turf. Tell us what we're looking at.
So this was a kill off. The customers didn't have irrigation. They wanted to switch to Bermuda grass. So the picture on the left is May the 1st with us seeding it in a improved seeded Bermuda grass. The picture on the right is May the 15th.
Wow.
Now, the fertilizer that we put on it was Holganix that day.
Man. So give us that time frame again.
The picture on the left is May the 1st. The picture on the right is May the 15th.
2 weeks. That's unbelievable. And the only thing you put down was Holganix Bio 800.
That's all we put down. We came back, actually, the reason I was on May the 15th was to do the fertilization app.
Wow. And
so if you'll notice, I'm sorry, Barrett, the lawn beyond where it's cut was seeded that day as well.
Okay, right.
There were 2 side by side that were seeded at the same time.
Yeah. Wow, that's a beautiful thing. And I'll tell you, we do see enhanced germination when you use the Bio 800 in any establishment, whether that's a new seed, new sod, new tree, shrub, flower, you name it. If you want to establish something better, watering in with the Bio 800 product line will get us better rooting, get us quicker germination. Usually we see germination within just a couple of days, and we can usually beat a standalone starter fertilizer by 7 to 14 days in germination. Different turf types, different results, but boy, this picture tells 1,000 words. Thanks, Jonathan. That's pretty cool.
And I was actually pretty impressed with that. And we did have a lot of rain, but it came up thick, even, clean. Neither of these customers had done anything prior to that application of Holganix.
Wow. So we've heard about fertilizer rate reduction, which has given us all kinds of benefits. We've heard about your root improvement with the Holganix Roots for You competition you won that year. Here we're looking at establishment on new seed. Love these examples, Jonathan. Let's move into the place where we first met. One of your agronomists, and one of the things I love about your company is the depth of agronomy that you have on your team. And you've got a one really passionate agronomist who did some research online and was doing a bunch of trials side by side, Tommy, with trying to figure out how to solve your Imprellis challenges. Go back in time. Tell us about your Imprellis challenges. Tell us about what Tommy was looking at and how we kind of found Holganix and how you and I met.
So we were one of the early adopters of Imprellis. We actually tested it through NC State University the fall before it was released.
Jonathan, just hit hold for 1 second, Jonathan. I just want some people may not know what Imprellis is. Imprellis was a new herbicide by DuPont that was wonderful at killing broadleaf weeds, particularly good at clover and other hard to kill broadleaf weeds. It also happened to have a long-term negative effect on conifers and other trees. And so it became banned. In the process, a lot of early adopters had a lot of tree challenges and dead trees, frankly, to deal with. And so Jonathan was one of those. So I'm sorry, Jonathan. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure you didn't take that for granted.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. We take that for granted. Everybody knows what it is. We spent 2 years dealing with it. So, but when Imprellis came out, we tested it in the fall, had no problems. Came out in the spring, sprayed the first half with it, started doing the second half. And we started seeing conifers curl up in around May. And at the time, as we went through the process with DuPont, our customers, we weren't waiting on DuPont to come up with a solution. They really, they kind of denied it in the beginning, and it was a slow evolving process to actually fix the plants that were out there. And so we started looking at things on our own, how we could grow them back out, how we could minimize the damage, looking at things that had worked in the past, using more carbon, using things that we knew that would help them. And we tested a lot of products. We started using just a basic humic acid product. And then as in our research, we found the Holganix, and it had what really kind of got us on Holganix, to be honest with you, was it's a clean product from a mixability, solubility, and staying in solution standpoint. A lot of the products back then, in the early days of the humic acids and the biological products, they either wouldn't stay in suspension, clogged the nozzles, or just weren't stable entities. And Holganix came out of the gate having all those in their corner, which made it an easy choice. And then, as you'll see in some of the next pictures, we were able to bring some trees back from the brink by doing drenches with it.
So these are conifers that were damaged by Imprellis. Is that what we're looking at, Jonathan?
Yes. And
so that you can see the side by side. Obviously, the ones that look kind of pale and look like they're really struggling, Imprellis damage, and then 3 soil drenches. Over what period of time do you remember, Jonathan, that you did those 3 soil drenches?
They were done a month apart.
Okay. And so soil drench, no foliar, just right around the root ball of the tree?
On these particular ones, we just did drenches. There are some that we've done foliar with, but I think as we went through the process, we found that the drench was really all we needed to do.
And Jonathan, are you able to see the pictures? I know your internet wasn't super stable.
Yes.
Okay, so how about this picture we're looking at right here? I mean, I see a stick on one side, and the other side I see a green conifer. Tell me, do you remember that?
This is one that Tommy dealt with, and it's one of those, I think he thought, I'll just do it because I'm here. And we weren't really expecting to leaf it back out.
Yeah.
And at the time, the Imprellis, it devastated these trees, and this one flushed back out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And we were shocked.
And here's another Imprellis recovery. And for those of you maybe who had some Imprellis damage and lived through it, I mean, it absolutely killed hundreds and thousands of trees. The damage to DuPont was, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was in the hundreds of millions that they had to pay out. And there was, people were saying there was no hope for these Imprellis damaged trees. And through the guys at GrowinGreen and Tommy, one of Jonathan's agronomists, and Jonathan, we saw this result, and we went to DuPont and talked to their agronomists and tried to get them to see this as a solution. They were so buried in litigation that they couldn't even get their head up. And so it's a shame we couldn't have helped more people. We certainly did take that and help a dozen or so other customers recover from Imprellis, but you guys were the ones that really helped us really see the before and after. And so really thank you for that. And it was a great way for us to get to meet each other.
And we appreciate y'all. And there's actually a couple of videos on our YouTube channel at GrowinGreen that actually show the process and show us the before video of us actually applying the Holganix, and then the after video when Tommy went back. And they're not of these, but there are some large cryptomerias that did really, really well. And these were all trees that were slated for removal.
Right.
Still standing today.
And the cost of treating one of those trees with a Holganix product was just a couple of bucks, right?
Yeah, I mean, like those trees that we would have probably charged them $150 to drench those 3 trees. Right.
And your cost was a real fraction of that, even. I mean, obviously, if labor was involved. Just really tremendous. Now, you've used it with your tree and shrub program ever since, right? With your maintenance program?
Yes, it's been a staple of our tree and shrub program ever since we discovered, obviously, it helping the plant de-stress and come back out of the damage.
Can you help us understand how many times a year you're using Holganix in your tree program and some of the benefits you're seeing generally? Forget about Imprellis, just a general maintenance program.
So what we do is we call a sprinch early in the spring, generally February, March, of Holganix, and also an insecticide to help with aphids, beetles, whatever other sucking insects are out there. And then as we start the foliar spray, we do mix it into the foliar, but that's kind of the real asset's the sprinch up front. We're getting the most around the root system, and that's where we want it. We also do a final drench in late fall, again at a high rate, to help it get through the winter stress.
Right.
Now, what we've seen is healthier plants. One kind of interesting note is we've seen less aphid populations breaking through past the insecticide. In the past, we would still have black crepe myrtles no matter what we put on them, and now I haven't seen one in years on one of our properties.
That's a great story, and we see that correlation. And I was talking to Jonathan about this when we were talking a couple of days ago. But for those of you who are on the phone listening, the Brix index is a measurement. It's an indicator of how much sugar and acid the plants are able to produce. It's also a sign of how efficient the physiology of the plant is. And so a lot of organic growers of produce will actually measure Brix on a monthly basis, and because they want to drive the Brix up, because that means they're going to have better produce, better tasting produce, higher quality produce. But another reason to look at Brix is because it tells us how efficient the plant is at physiology and producing those sugars and acids. And as we get those sugars and acids higher, the aphids are repelled. They don't like to go on plants that have high Brix index. They like to go for the plants that are struggling a little bit more with a lower Brix index. And so by improving Brix, we're going to improve the plant's natural defenses against aphids. Some other insects as well, but aphids are a big one. And so that's kind of some of the background behind why you're seeing those aphid populations go down without using a bunch of additional insecticides. And the Bio 800 product line absolutely, every time we measure it, improves Brix by dramatic numbers. We're doing a lot in agriculture now. and that's one of the primary reasons they're using this is because we're getting better tasting fruits and vegetables because of that Brix index. So just kind of a side note on that. So Jonathan, as you talk about that you don't get flare-ups, we put that note in here on the slide. Can you tell us about what you're talking about there?
Well, one of the bad things about aphids is generally, the way our program works, we're coming about every 30 days in the summertime. And we are really selling our program as a maintenance program. We're not trying to cure all the ills that are out there through the program. Now, we will address certain needs if necessary, and I'll take my own house as an example. We've been treating it for 5 years now, and every year I have 3 crepe myrtles that just would, no matter what would happen with the insecticide, we would start to see the black sooty mold show up in late July from where the aphids were starting to get active and secrete. And we've tried increasing the amount of insecticide to get a longer longevity out of it. But once we started using the Holganix, that kind of went away. We also saw a dramatic reduction in Japanese beetle activity. And, we've been able to manage our insect levels fairly consistent on a lower scale than prior to using it, where we would have been using a lot more organophosphates, a lot more, rescue products in the summertime. Now we're able to stay in more of a maintenance mode and a preventative mode.
Yeah, that's really cool. And we talked about the Brix, and that's one of the reasons. The other thing that we're seeing as a benefit is anytime you're using a systemic, something like an imidacloprid, a systemic insecticide, in conjunction with the Bio 800, because we're going to improve the physiology of that plant, because a lot of that biology is going to actually enter the plant. Some of the biology is endophytes, so they go inside the plant. Some are ectophytes; they live around the outside of the plant. But the endophytes are going to help improve the efficacy of the imidacloprid type insecticides, and so that's going to help give us additional benefit as well. So cool stuff, Jonathan. Thanks. So we've heard Jonathan talk about trees. We've heard him talk about seed. We've heard him talk about fertilizer. We've heard him talk about the roots. Before I move on, Jonathan, can you tell everybody how to get to your YouTube channel? Because you mentioned that.
I can send out a link too.
Okay. Katie will send out a link, but why don't you mention it real quick, Jonathan?
All right.
Your YouTube channel?
Yes. It is, I just make sure I get this right. Kind of like your cell phone.
Yeah.
But it's green. They'll just search GrowinGreen with 1 G in the middle. We should find it.
Okay, cool. So GrowinGreen, Kate's going to give you the link, everybody. But tremendous YouTube collection that I've seen over the years. Tommy, one of his agronomists, is incredibly entertaining on YouTube. So it really is some really good information and things well beyond Holganix that you can find out there. So let's move on. We talked about agronomics and how we're helping you, how you're using the Bio 800 products to really as an agronomic tool. How about marketing wise? What are you seeing on a marketing perspective using the organic kind of biological soil health approach? Is it helping you with sales, marketing, that type of thing? Can you tell us about that?
Well, we've tried different models and how to promote it, and what we found has worked best for us is the overall holistic approach of the company. Is we want to use the most environmentally responsible products we can put out there to get the best results. And in presenting that to the customers, they appreciate the fact that we're not trying to say, all right, we got a magic bullet that's just going to solve all your world's problems, but yet we've looked at every part of our program and tried to put it together to give them the best results. And it kind of gives us an edge over our competitors. When we all get there and we're all putting out an estimate and we're all within a few dollars of price, and then we say, all right, we're using biological fertility, it's kind of the extra that pushes us over the goal line with them. And we've seen a lot of positive response from the customer base. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate it in the marketing itself, but once you can get in front of them, they really seem to buy into that idea.
Yeah, so it's a good point, Jonathan. I mean, at the end of the day, people are going to call 2 or 3 companies, a lot of the times. We all show up to estimates. If we could try to race to zero and lower our prices as a way to get the business. But most of our customers aren't buying the cheapest car they can buy or buying the cheapest home they can buy. So why would they buy the cheapest lawn care program? They want to buy the best, and they want to buy the one that also has the best story around environmental sustainability. So if at the door, when you're selling that customer or on the phone, after you've done the estimate and everybody else has shown up, you use this as a differentiator. It's a great way to give your people a tool to help close the deal. At least that's what I'm hearing from Jonathan. I've heard that from other customers around the country as well. So Jonathan, kind of stepping aside from marketing, we've talked about agronomics. What do you see as you've built a heck of a business there in a pretty competitive market? As we got a lot of other lawn care operators on the phone on the webinar, what would you say is advice for growing their business from your experiences?
Well, I think we're all facing the same challenges in a tight labor market. And I don't see any change in that coming in the near future. So what we've had to do is kind of look at how can we get more out of what we've got. And we've spent a lot of time, money, and effort to make our guys more efficient, basically. We've got really good techs. Most of our techs have been with us for over 5 years. And we let them deal with their own customers. The customers have their cell phone numbers. We create the overall effect of here's your program, and then let them make adjustments as they needed when they're in the field. But the customers seem to really like having the same person on the lawn every time. And that's been a big hit with our customers, that they know who they call, they know who they're dealing with. We actually get a few customers who get mad when they're on the fringe of a route that we have to condense a little bit, and they think they're going to get cut to another guy. And it gets kind of funny. They're like, I'm leaving if you take me out of this person's route. And but that's been a huge help. We've actually lowered our cancellation rate by 4% overall. So we're down to about 15% now from 19% when we started to implement this. And we've been able to increase the efficiency of those guys from about $150,000 per route per man to around an average of $225,000.
Wow.
And some of that's been in better routing, some's been in working with the guys better, and some of it's been in better trucks, better equipment, giving them the best tools that we can put out there. This is a truck we just picked up, and I know somebody's already noticed there's no hoses on the reel, but this was a truck we actually, we all start out generally with a pickup truck and a tank in the back. It limits you to one application per site. So we started over the years, improving the mousetrap. So this is our latest truck. We've just picked it up. We've got to pull the tanks out and plumb it and wire the reels. But this truck allows us to do 5 different applications of liquid at the same stop.
Wow.
We've got a 400-gallon lawn tank in the front, a 200-gallon tree tank, and then 2 110s off the back, plus we can carry granular. So in 2 separate pumping systems. The tree is always on its own pumping system. The other ones, we can go back and forth. We can mix in together. We have a lot of options for the guys when they get out there. They also have dry storage underneath for, bed pre-emergence, stuff like that. The doors open up, and basically it's allowed the guys to pull up at a stop, do their second lawn, their second tree, a fungicide, and an insect control at the same time, instead of having to come back or rely on somebody else to come back.
Right.
So, that's really helped the guys get more efficient. It lets us get more money out of our assets and what we're putting into it. And I don't have to have as many guys out there.
Yeah.
I'm not turning it over as fast.
I'll tell you, that's some really good points, Jonathan. I mean, if we just kind of think about what Jonathan just said, I hear a lot of people in the industry focus on retention rates of customers, and Jonathan touched on that. Obviously, if we can improve the retention rate of our customers, we can do less marketing and grow our business. And he's at 15% with a customer base of Jonathan's size. That's a really low cancel rate. if you're treating 200 lawns and you're the owner operator, you may have a lower cancel rate than that because you know every single person personally. When you get into 13 trucks, 15% is about as good as it gets. But here's the piece that I thought was really interesting that we just learned, which is that Jonathan focuses not just on retention rate of customers, but almost ahead of that, he's focusing on retention rate of technicians. When he says each tech has been with the company for 5 years on average, I mean, that's tremendous. And if you think about all the problems we're dealing with labor shortages, technicians, good technicians that really care about their job and that we can continue to invest in year after year, that's probably the biggest bottleneck to growing most of our businesses beyond, a couple of trucks. And the way Jonathan's done that, if you heard what he just said, is he's chosen to invest into better equipment to make their technicians' lives easier, but also so they can get more revenue per truck. Because let's face it, if your technician's staying with you for 5 years, they're getting paid more than a guy who just started year one. And how do you continue to maintain profitability if you're going to have your technicians stick around and get raises every year? Well, one of the ways you can do that is to get more revenue out of every truck. So Jonathan went from 150 to 220, 150,000 per year to 220,000 per year by getting more efficient, by getting better equipment. And so invest in that equipment instead of hiring a bunch more people or having turnover of his people. Get better service and better retention. So neat stuff, Jonathan.
He also said something about the fact that he allows his techs, he empowers his techs.
Yeah.
In many ways, like the techs own the routes. They have, the customers have the cell phone numbers of techs. That's really cool.
Yeah. Empower them to make their own agronomic decisions and give them the tools to do things on the fly that they can make some changes if they see something inappropriate. And they could do tree and lawn all at the same time with one stop because of that truck. Really neat, innovative stuff. I don't see this everywhere. And, I'm out all over the country, Jonathan, meeting lawn care operators every single day. And this is a pretty neat approach. So hats off to you.
So one thing I just wanted to add, like I said, I build their agronomic program to fit 80% of the properties we do. All right, that's my goal, is it'll cover 80%. The other 20% has to be done by the technicians. So when they get to a lawn that's not responding to our regular program, then we give them the tools to add extra stuff to that particular customer. And that's where we use, we're a liquid company other than fall apps, but then we bring in the granular Holganix, the healthy grow, the different products for them to add as a kind of as a boost if a lawn's just not responding yet and they want it to get it up. So we kind of give them that power as well to up those rates when they see fit. So, and that helps to get the customers up a little bit quicker without having to put it out on every single lawn. So we still get efficiency, but we still also get personalization that way.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's one of the reasons you built such a nice business. So let's talk about from a macro perspective, Jonathan. What trends do you see in the industry?
Well, what we're seeing, and I think we've all seen some of the national companies go through a phase of online ordering, online measurements, which has somewhat been a disaster to some of them. What we're seeing is our customers appreciate the personal service. And there's a way to be efficient with better computers, better navigation, better software, but also still have that customer know who you are and know that they're getting the same technician every time. And I think we're kind of going back old school a little bit to customer service. And, our number one complaint that we have to work on as a company is communication with our customers. And we've kind of set the bar a little high and we have to keep improving on it. But people are very demanding today. They call and they expect you to answer the phone almost immediately. And if they don't get a call back within an hour, they're upset. And all of a sudden, we're getting feedback that we don't want. So what we're really focusing on is communication with the customers, kind of putting our arms around them. But it all starts with being honest with them, not selling them something that's not going to work, because we're going to be standing there with them 6 months from now saying, well, I don't know why your lawn hadn't improved.
Yeah.
So part of the reason we get more money out of our customers is we're up front with them. We sell fungicides up front. We sell insect controls up front. We sell seedings up front. And we just say, look, this is what it takes. You can't nickel and dime it. because it's too hard to come back after the fact and upsell. We don't do a great job of upselling in the middle of the season, just because we're all so busy. It's all we can do to get the work done. So the more you can do up front and get them on a program that fits their needs and it's going to give them the results, I think the better off you're going to be in the long run.
Yeah. And hey, I mean, a lot of times we're afraid, we're just happy to get the sale. We don't want to ask for too much. But, I used this example earlier. I mean, just look in the customer's driveway. How many of them are driving stripped down cars? Most of them are driving pretty well optioned cars. They added it all up when they bought the car, and they got a fancy one and a nicer one with all the bells and whistles. So don't be afraid to sell them the things they need for their lawn, and look at and their trees and shrubs. And look, it's going to be harder to get a hold of them later, in this busy world. Even if we have good intentions of calling them to sell them aeration seed or insect control, whatever, if you can't get a hold of them, you're not going to sell it to them. So you might as well do it right up front. It's a really good point, Jonathan. And you said you're going old school, but I'll tell you, old school is new school. I mean, if you look at Zappos as an example, it's a digital company selling shoes over the internet. But one of the things that made them who they are, and they sold for $1 billion, billion would it be, to Amazon just a couple years ago, and they just sell shoes online, nothing fancy, but it was their customer service. And they actually rewarded people, Jonathan, at Zappos. They're taking phone orders for shoes, and you'd think in a call center you want to get their order and get them off the phone as quickly as possible. They actually rewarded their people to keep their customers on the phones as long as possible. So the people who had longer conversations and really got to know their inbound customers actually got the bonuses. And so they kind of turned that upside down. And I just mentioned because you say you're going old school, but Zappos is new school, and they're using the same techniques. So it really, some things never go out of style.
No, I think there's too many people getting away from it, and people still want it.
Yeah,
especially older customers.
And look,
who have money in our industry.
And the big national competitors are not going to do as good a job as our good local operators. This is where you can differentiate yourself from the big national competitors and beat them on service and charge what you want. It's a really good example, Jonathan. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to get into some questions for Jonathan. But before we do, we got some resources to go deeper if you want to learn more. We've got over 70 case studies, everything from commercial operators like Jonathan sharing us his exact stories at a scientific level and measurements, to university studies. We spent well over $1 million doing university studies on all of our products. So take a look at that. The Soil Smart program is, you can download that. That's just an example of how you can build a program using Holganix biological products. And we've got the Plant Start process, which is just simply using Holganix products in an installation process. We saw Jonathan with his seeding application. That's an installation process. But anytime you're going to be planting any trees, shrubs, flowers, sod, seed, water it in with a Bio 800 product, and you're going to get much better establishment. And we've got this webinar recording, which you can share it with your other people in your company if you'd like to, or anybody in the industry. And we have other webinars going on all the time as well. We've got the Holganix Launch Box, which gives us, it's basically marketing resources that you can use if you want to start to market Holganix into your programs and how to use it as a differentiator from a marketing perspective. We've got marketing support, which you can go to our university, and we're happy to work with you on anything we have on how to sell aeration seeding, how to sell tree shrub, how to sell lawn care, how to get your customers' neighbors on the program. And we've got
an upcoming webinar featuring you, which I haven't scheduled yet, so don't check it just yet, but it will be scheduled soon.
Okay, so I'll have to start doing my homework on that one.
Yep, that's in December.
And but stay tuned. And all right, well, we've come up. We're now 7 minutes over our actually more than 7 minutes over our window, aren't we? It's 7 after, but we were supposed to end before the top of the hour.
People stayed on, so yeah. I guess they were enjoying themselves.
It was engaged. There's a few questions we didn't answer just out of time. Some of them were pretty specific and technical. We're going to go ahead and answer those questions for you all, provided we have your email address. And so there won't be a question that goes unanswered. But I want to thank everybody for their participation. I know everybody's got a lot to do in their day, and the fact that you gave us an hour of your day to sit here and listen to Jonathan and I, talk about growing lawn care businesses, growing turf, growing trees and shrubs, and Holganix products. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And Jonathan, can't thank you enough for the long customer life you've given us and how long we've been doing business together, and as well as every single year at GIE, I have about the best meal I have of the entire year when Jonathan and I go out to dinner every year at where do we go, Jonathan?
Jeff Ruby's.
Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. My gosh.
Is that the place with the sushi?
Yeah.
Oh.
Jonathan makes a reservation a year in advance, and he and I go there every year. And man, it's the best dinner of the whole year. If you ever get a chance to go there, I'd highly recommend it. But best that a vendor takes you because it's kind of expensive, right? So or bring your gold.
So,
but it's worth it.
Thank you. If anybody's got any more questions, feel free to send me an email. I'll be happy to talk to them individually.
Yeah.
And we'll do whatever we can to help them.
John, thank you so much for being so open with all the other customers that we have, which could be quasi competitors, but I know how you are. Hey, it's rising tide raises all boats. So we got Jonathan's contact information. You all will get it if you don't already have it, and as well as his YouTube channel. Encourage you both to look into both of those things. Thanks again, Jonathan. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right.